Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
We have with us former ambassador of India to China and Pakistan, Ambassador Gautam Bambawale. Welcome to ThePrint, sir. Let me ask you directly. My first question to you will be what everybody is discussing now. Prime Minister Modi visiting Bishkek for the Shanghai Organization, the Cooperation Organization meeting, the SCO summit meeting, where Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan is also expected. Although Ministry of External Affairs has said that, there is no meeting planned, but what do you think? Do you think a resumption of dialogue is going to happen? Your views, please.
No, you see, both the leaders will be present at the SCO summit because India and Pakistan are members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But as the Ministry of External Affairs has already announced, there is no formal meeting between the two prime ministers which is scheduled. So I don't think there will be a formal across-the-table meeting, but they will meet casually at some of the events and they might exchange greetings, etc. But there will not be any talk of any substantive issues.
So, but then do you think that this is time probably now to break the ice and resume dialogue, maybe not a comprehensive dialogue, but some sort of a resumption post what has happened?
Look, Nayanima, you know that this government has always been saying that the first step will need to be taken by Pakistan by stopping cross-border terrorism and ending terrorism targeted at India. If the Pakistanis take some serious steps and some measures which are very credible in this direction, then we can take a look at it later. But they will have to take the first move on this whole issue of cross-border terrorism.
So also recently we just saw during Eid there were reports coming from Pakistan that Hafiz Saeed was stopped, from offering prayers and going out in the public. Do you think they are now actually walking the talk, or they're just doing it under pressure from IMF or maybe the FATF meeting coming up and all that?
No, I am afraid that stopping him from leading prayers, etc., is a very cosmetic thing. As I told you earlier, and as I've been saying to you earlier, they have to stop cross-border terrorism aimed at India. If we see a dip in that kind of activity, then we will take it as serious. Just stopping him from leading prayers or just stopping him from doing certain activities in Pakistan is not sufficient.
Thank you, sir. So moving on to China, how do you see that relationship sort of building up? We've seen how they have now come over and, lifted the hold on listing Masood Azhar. Do you think now it's probably the time when we can now go for another informal, like the Wuhan summit, Wuhan 2.0? We are expecting President Xi Jinping to be here. How do you see the dynamics?
No, you're absolutely right. Both President Xi and Prime Minister Modi, they have taken the step of meeting at an informal summit in Wuhan last year in 2018. And now that Prime Minister Modi has been voted back to office here in India, I am quite confident that there will be another such meeting, this time in India. I think it is very important for the leaders of two countries to meet so that they can talk about important overarching issues which are there in the relationship between any two countries, and in this case between India and China. So when Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping meet a second time, and I don't know if it will be an informal summit or whether it's a formal summit, that is for them to decide, we will find that they will talk to each other about what is called by many people as strategic communication. They will talk to each other about their country's objectives, their goals, how they intend to achieve those goals. And I think this is a very important thing because it helps to build trust and understanding not only between the two leaders but also between the two governments and the two countries. So I hope that the next meeting between the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, takes place at an early date.
We've seen time and again the border issue comes up, and also the fact that China is now, one of the most important allies of Pakistan. Keeping all these things in mind, and also the fact that, that this larger overarching objection that we have towards Belt and Road Initiative, how do you see all that dynamics playing out?
Look, between any two countries, there are certain areas in which the governments of those two countries will agree and have a similar approach. But there will be other issues on which they do not see eye to eye. It is the same between India and China. There are certain subjects on which we have a similar approach, and there are certain subjects on which we do not see eye to eye. So we can continue to talk to each other about the subjects where we do not see eye to eye. We can try to narrow the gap. We can try to reduce the difference. But in areas where we see eye to eye, I think we can move ahead very quickly. And let me give you an example of areas where we actually see eye to eye. One of the earliest international engagements for Prime Minister Modi is going to be his visit for the G20 in Japan. And in the G20, India and China have very similar approaches and very similar viewpoints. So I'm sure that we will be making our positions known in the G20. I'll give you an example in the bilateral relationship where we see eye to eye. We have agreed last December between the two foreign ministers of India and China that the two governments will aim and work together to increase people-to-people exchanges. So more students, more tourists, more people visiting each other's countries, including journalists like you, including people from think tanks. So this is some area where we look at things quite similarly. And these are the areas where we must push the relationship further and work to build greater understanding. And by greater understanding, we'll also build mutual trust. I think we should make it easier for people from India to visit China and from China to visit India. So visa relaxation is definitely an area where the two governments can consider some forward movement.
So then also, right now we are seeing that international markets are sort of in a condition of, jittery with the US-China trade war escalating every day. Also, we are seeing what America is doing with Huawei's 5G rollout. India has not taken a position as yet, but do you see this larger, as, in a larger gambit as an opportunity that India should grab in terms of US-China trade war? And how do you see the 5G rollout, the entire, issues around it?
Well, as far as I am concerned, and this is my personal view, as I told you, I don't speak for the government anymore, I don't represent the government, but I feel that in this friction on trade and other issues between the US and China, it is not necessary for India to take sides. And I hope it doesn't become necessary for India to take sides, because we have trade, we have other relationships with both countries, and both of these relationships with the United States and with China are important for us. So I do hope that we do not evolve into a situation where other countries, third countries, including India, are asked to take sides, because that will not be in our best national interest. As far as the escalating trade war is concerned, I think this is something for the United States and China to decide upon, to come to an agreement and to de-escalate it. So I hope the two governments will continue to stay in contact with each other and work out their differences.
Sir, and also we've seen, now that the Modi government is back, and yesterday we heard our foreign ministers, Mr. Jaishankar, stating that we will now be doing a lot of projects and project implementation will be the focus. India is building one of the container terminals in Sri Lanka. Many people are viewing it as our, sort of counter towards the Chinese, influence within Sri Lanka and the entire Hambantota port episode. How do you view all this?
Look at it as a competition between India and China. We have always been doing projects in many countries, just like our foreign minister, new external affairs minister, Dr. Jaishankar mentioned at the conference yesterday. The idea that he put forth yesterday was that we would like to do these projects with greater efficiency and do them faster, do them quicker, and do them with greater productivity. So this is a welcome step. We need to do such international projects, whether it is at Colombo or any other project that we have undertaken. For example, the trilateral highway project is still to be completed, and I hope it gets completed fast, between India, Myanmar and Thailand. So I hope that we are able to execute these projects efficiently and quickly, and that will be a welcome move ahead by Indian companies.
So then also when you were the ambassador to China, there was a lot of talk, and those talks are still going on, but we are sort of probably in the finishing leg on the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Where are we, and do you think Indian companies need to be scared of the fact that if we sign RCEP, Chinese goods are going to flood our markets?
Yeah. No, I don't think Indian companies need to be scared. In fact, Indian companies need to look upon the RCEP as an opportunity rather than as a problem. And I believe that the RCEP should focus not merely on trade in goods, but should also focus on trade in services, because services is an area where India has strengths. So Indian companies will be interested in exporting their services to the RCEP member countries, which is all of ASEAN, plus of course Japan, China, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand. So I do hope that we're able to bargain hard and that we're able to gain a lot of ground on trade and services, as well as in investments and movement of natural persons. Those are the areas which interest India, and we must get something on those fronts.
Sir, and also a question that always comes in everybody's mind after the Doklam military standoff, and we saw the kind of, resistance with which India faced China, and India was there, eyeball to eyeball, so to say. Do you see another chapter like that emerging until and unless we settle the border issue and also the issue around the Tri-Junction area?
No, I think what has happened is that the Chinese troops moved into an area which we had told them that they should not move into, and that led to the Doklam crisis. But I think both countries have learned from this crisis. Both countries have moved to de-escalate the crisis, and it was de-escalated very successfully. And then we moved on from Doklam to Wuhan. So my point is that we should continue talking to each other about the boundary. I do not know when it can be finally resolved, when a final resolution will take place. It might take a little bit of time, but till that point in time when we solve the boundary issue, we must maintain peace and tranquility on the border.
So if I can ask you, what exactly happened in Wuhan? What is it that we achieved? And do you think probably a Wuhan 2.0 will solve further issues? Because that's an area that everybody sort of speculates.
Yeah. Well, let me start by telling you and your viewers that the reason we did an informal summit and not a formal summit is because we found that in an informal summit, the two main leaders, the leader of India, Prime Minister Modi, and the leader of China, President Xi Jinping, would get more time to talk to each other than to spend on other things like protocol and other engagements and so on. So that is why we were very keen that the two countries should do an informal summit. And eventually at Wuhan, I think the two leaders, Prime Minister Modi and President Xi, spoke to each other for somewhere between 8 to 10 hours, which is much more than they would have discussed in a formal visit or a protocol visit. So this was one of the important considerations. Now, the discussions that they had, better understanding on each country's part of the calculations, of the objectives, of the goals of the other country. And this has led to a better understanding of the other side and also helped in building trust. So all this has happened in an 8 to 10 hour summit level meeting between our Prime Minister and the Chinese President. I'm sure if we have a second meeting now soon here in India, that it will lead to even further and better understanding between the two countries. And that is the importance of these informal summits between India and China.
Thank you so much, sir. For ThePrint, this is Nayanima Basu, and on camera is Suraj Besht. Thank you.